Hey everyone, it's Amy here and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another Love It or Leave It review and swatches of a brand new product that I'm sure you guys are super excited to hear about, and this is the new Tarte Tarteist Pro palette. And I was so surprised and shocked, and I'm sure you guys were too, to see that this was a brand new product that like no one had a sneak peek of. Like it was like, oh my god, all of a sudden it just came out of nowhere, the new Pro line. And so I was super excited to get my hands on it. I of course paid for super fast shipping because I was so excited and wanted to try it, as well as I wanted to get my review up for you guys as soon as possible. That way you guys can purchase this if you're interested. It is currently still available on Tarte's website. So this is what the packaging looks like, and I know it seems very boring and basic, but I actually think it's gorgeous with the black and the gold writing, and being that it's the Pro line, I actually think it is so simple and sleek and sophisticated and just so beautiful. And now it does have like a plastic covering on the front that's going to show fingerprints and get dirty, but I've already cleaned it off and it's super easy to clean. It's not that material that NARS and Lorac uses. Now the new Pro Glow palette, which also released, has that same kind of texture on the front and packaging, which that review will be up for you guys tomorrow, but this one does have a much easier packaging to clean, which is good. So let me go ahead and share with you guys what the gorgeous palette looks like. Oh my gosh, I'm in love, you guys. Like, these colors are gorgeous, and even though there are some pops of color in here, they're very, very wearable and just really, really beautiful. I love the shades that they put in here. And I love the shades in here because you have the lighter ones over here, then you have the darker. It's just a beautifully curated palette, and I will get to swatching a little later. Comparison to the Tartelette and Bloom palette, I went ahead and took notes on the swatches that I'll be doing and what the tones are. There's only one shade in here that I find is very, very similar. Everything else you can tell there are tone differences. So there's only one I would consider kind of a dupe. The rest are different, so that's good news. Something that's really cool about this palette, which I don't think they even put it on the website, but you definitely, if you follow them on Snapchat, you will know that the way they curated this palette is each of the rows are meant to go together. So there are 16 matte eyeshadows, and then there's 4 of these really pigmented luster metallic eyeshadows. And so each of the 4 of these go with the row that they're in. Isn't that really cool? Like the look I did today was the top row. That's exactly what I did on my eyes. Now I've done looks mixing them all together, but if you're someone that's new with makeup, or if you don't want to have to put a lot of that in going, oh my god, this can be overwhelming. What colors do I use? What do? I don't know. They did curate this palette to be easily usable. Like, okay, this shade goes with all these to create a beautiful purple look. This one creates kind of a rosy look. This creates a darker vampy look. Here's like a natural bronze look. So I love that they did that. That is just really thoughtful and curated really nicely. Obviously, you can totally be creative and mix and match. I've done that a plenty of times, but I'm really excited to tell you guys, this is the same amazing formula of the other Amazonian clay palettes, as well as the Tartelette and Bloom. It's made in the USA. They feel exactly the same. I find with all the Tarte Amazonian clay eyeshadows that the lighter shades are like butter. They are so smooth and so silky. Tarte does have a little bit of a powdery kick-up formula, but once you tap it off, it doesn't matter. So easily blendable, like same amazing formula. Now I find with all their darker shades, they have a little bit more of a dry texture compared to the lighter shades. Still nothing compared to like when they're made in China or with their holiday kits, like still on par with the Tartelette and Bloom palette. Like if you love the quality of this palette, you guys, you are hands down going to love the quality of this one. I think that the metallic shades in here are even better than the Tartelette and Bloom. They're slightly different, which is why. But if you love the Tartelette and Bloom or any of the Amazonian clay formula eyeshadows, you are going to love this palette. That's how good it is. It's fantastic. It's beautifully curated. You get light colors, dark colors, plums, purples, orangey. Like you get a variety of shimmer shades. Like it's a beautiful palette. So quality is amazing, made in the United States. It's a beautifully curated palette. Same amazing quality as all their other palettes. So let's get to swatching then, since this will be a rather quick review on my thoughts about the palette, because it's the same. It's amazing. It's great. They blend out. They're like a dream. You can build them. They're so good. They're nice. Like, can't say good enough things about the formula. So this first shade right here is called Classic, which is described as a cream. And then we have the shade Innocent, which is a soft peach. And then a little bit more warm toned, See how I had to blow off the little bit of excess? That won't happen once you're actually applying them because you'll tap off the brush, but they are a little bit of kick up in the pan, especially when you're swatching as well. This one is called Whimsy, which is a brick. Then we have this shade, which, like I said, I find the darker shades have a little bit more of a drier formula and not quite as buttery, and that's why they don't have quite a bit of kick up either. But this shade is called Smoked, which is a dark brown. And then we have Ethereal, and this one is a bronze. Like, oh my God, like, look how beautiful those shades are. Again, what I have on my eyes right now, it's just really beautiful row. One of my favorite rows as far as it's going to be the most wearable for me. But this entire palette, oh my gosh, you guys, this entire palette is beautiful. So moving on to the second row right here, which if you guys love purple shades, you are going to love this row. So the first shade we have is Vintage, which is described as an ivory. Now compared to that first row, the first creamy shade is much more yellow. This one has more of a white base. Then the next shade is kind of a light cool plum, and this one is called Fierce. So the next one is more of a darker, richer purple, and this one is called No Filter, which is a purple mauve. Then we have a really, really deep purple, and this one is called Vamp, which is a deep plum. And then last we have the foiled shade, which this one is called Glam, which is a champagne. I love this shade, but look at those beautiful purple colors. Like, I love this palette, you guys. I love it. Okay, moving on to the third row. Now this one is more of your rose gold and like the shades that go with rose, kind of burgundy shades. So this first one is called Chic, which is a pale pink. And so what I like about it, also about this palette, is that all the shades in your first row are kind of your setting powders or highlighter powders. So when I go in with a primer and then I like to set it before going in with all my eyeshadows, these all make really great ones. So again, this one is Chic, which is a pale pink. Then we have Profesh, which is taupe. Like, oh, that's such a beautiful brown. And then we have Mod, which is a deep cherry, which is definitely a lot more wearable than you would expect. And then this one is a beautiful kind of burgundy purple. And this one is called Drama, which is a maroon. And then this shade right here, you guys. This is called Minx, which is a shimmering mauve. Like, okay, so this last row in the palette are your browns and darker shades, and then one of those really fun duochrome shades, which is kind of like blue and green. Really fun. So the first shade is a really, really pretty brown shade. This one is called Indie. It's kind of like a beige, but it's got more of a gray undertone than it does a brown. And then next we have Bold, which is a light brown. And these are really pretty easy transition shades. And then we have Edgy, which is chocolate, which is a perfect brown. Like, that's a perfect brown. Then next we have Punk, which is a really, really dark black. This one is super pigmented, really easy to blend out. Blacks can be really tough. Sometimes they're too dry and just can't be blended. Sometimes they have a gray undertone. This is like a pitch black, super easy to blend out, which I love. And then, oh my goodness, like, look at that beautiful fun color. This one is called Trendy, which is a prismatic teal. So it's one of those that's gonna be blue, green, brown, like depending what the light is and what your base is. Also can change it up, but that makes a really beautiful smoky fun eye. Instead of like a classic smoky eye, this gives you a really edgy fun smoky eye. So those were all the swatches of the palette. All of them are beautiful. They're a really great formula. Can't say good enough things about it. These shades right here, like the shimmer metallics, are amazing. Now, they are best applied, I find, with my finger. Everything else you can use with the brush, but I like to put a really nice coat on with my finger, and then I go in with a flat shader brush and pack on a little bit more color. But if I go in with just the flat shader brush first, they are a little bit more subdued and not quite as like in your face like they are in the pan. So if you want them to look really metallic and foiled like I have on my eye right now, I suggest going in with a pinky and patting it on and then taking a brush, and I like to use a flat shader brush like a MAC 242, and then adding a little bit more and blending it out and it's going to be amazing, but these work best with your finger. So now let's go ahead and start comparing it to the Tartelette in Bloom. I wrote down about 7 shades that we're gonna compare just so that you guys can feel the difference and see the tones. I also will do full swatches of both these palettes and insert a picture a little bit later too. That way you can see the whole palettes side by side. So from this palette, we're gonna take the shade up here called Charmer, and we are gonna compare that to kind of the creamy shades in the palette in the new Pro palette. So this first one is called Charmer. Then we have Classic, and then we have Vintage. So Charmer from the Tartelette in Bloom is a little bit different than these. I will say it's the closest to Vintage in the new palette, but this one has a cream base. Then from the new Pro palette, we have Classic, which has more of a yellow base. And then from the new palette, we have Vintage, which to me has more of a white base. So moving on to some brown and rose shades. From the In Bloom palette, we have the shade Jet Setter, and I'm gonna compare that to the shade Indie in the Pro palette. And you're going to be able to see there is a slight difference, that the Jet Setter has more of a brown undertone, whereas Indie has more of a gray undertone. Then comparing that to the In Bloom palette, we have Sweetheart. And comparing that to the shade Chic from the new palette, you can see the slight difference that I find that Sweetheart has more of a peach undertone, and I find that Chic has a little bit more of a rose undertone. So again, these look similar but do have different undertones. So moving on to some darker shades, Activist from the In Bloom palette is kind of a dark brownish black. And then we're going to compare that to the black shade, which is Punk, in the new Pro palette, and you can see this one is definitely much more darker and black and pigmented. So now these are the two that I think are probably the most similar. Sorry, this one was Smoke Show compared to the black shade in the new one. This one is now called Activist, which is kind of a dark brown shade in Bloom, and we're going to compare that to Smoked in the new Pro palette. And you can see this one's probably the most similar, even though the one in the Pro palette, which is the shade Smoked, is a little bit lighter and not quite as like dark brown. I find that Activist is a little bit more dark brown black, whereas this one Smoked is more of just a really rich brown. But those two are probably the closest out of the two palettes. Okay, so moving on to the last comparisons. This one is called Leader from the In Bloom palette, and I'm comparing that to Edgy from the new palette, and you can see that Leader is a little bit more red, whereas Edgy is a little bit more just chocolate brown. Then comparing two of these shimmer shades, I find that the other two shades in here that are kind of like champagne colors, like Rocker and Funny Girl, are not similar to Glam from the new palette whatsoever, which is why I'm not comparing it. But I will compare the two kind of orangey shades. So this one is Firecracker from the In Bloom, comparing that to Ethereal from the new palette, and you can tell that the In Bloom palette is a little bit more bronzy compared to Ethereal, which is more orangey red shades. So again, you can see they're similar, but they do have distinct different undertones to them. So overall, I think there's only really one shade that's very, very similar, and the rest there are distinct differences that you can tell when you swatch them side by side. Hopefully when I swatch the two palettes right now and share with you guys what each palette looks like side by side, there is quite a bit of difference, at least in my eyes. Overall, definitely the new Tarte Pro palette is a absolute love it. I think it's an amazing, great quality. Same amazing Amazonian clay formula as their other Amazonian clay eyeshadows. Really long lasting, really blendable, work amazing, whether they're with primer or not. Really blendable, really easy to work with, very pigmented and saturated. The shimmer shades are absolutely amazing. Like I said, the tip is to apply them first with your finger and then go in with a shader brush. But overall, this palette's amazing. I cannot say good enough things about it. I'm so overly impressed. I think a lot of you are really going to enjoy it, and hopefully you guys found this review helpful, seeing swatches and seeing the palette and getting to know that the palette is the same amazing quality. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay tuned to all my upcoming videos, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye!